Okay, so our board policy, I got to read through this. AO 107 states, no person may speak more than once to an issue or for a period longer than 5 minutes, except upon consent of a majority of the district board. No more than 3 people may be heard on one side of an issue, except on consent of the majority of the district board. During public comments, the board does not engage in public discussion regarding personnel matters. So I have 3 people who have signed up to speak tonight. The first is Elijah Holloway. Could you come forward, please? Come on, take a seat. Welcome.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to speak on a few things. I was going to say that MATC should propose a new financial assistance for students opting into residing at the West Town Green residence because the current system is causing a huge issue for students because students have to wait to receive refund checks to pay.
Slow down.
Mr. Holloway, slow down just a little bit fast.
I'll start over.
Okay.
MATC should propose a new financial system for students opting into residing at the West Town Green residence because the current system is causing a huge issue for students because students have to wait to receive refund checks to pay rent when it should be packaged with tuition. So before they move in, their room is paid for, and then they receive the rest of the remaining amount after. And also there should be a more accurate roommate system because on multiple occasions, roommates have had physical or verbal altercations because of the poor selection system, and it's going to keep happening if changes are not made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next I have Elsa Spears.
Sorry.
I apologize.
No, that's all right. It's Elsa Marks. I was speaking on behalf of student D Turner.
Oh, okay, great.
I also, we've compiled a report of some of the findings that will, some research we've done with students and talking to them, and also talking to experts in the field on student housing and how that's been going in some other areas. The board would take a look at that at your discretion, I suppose. And I will also email a copy to you all after the meeting is over. Thank you. All righty. Now I've spoken already to the board and talked to a few of you, so I'll leave it to what Devariante has to say. Dear MATC, as an out-of-state student, I am enthusiastic about being here and am compelled to bring certain issues to your attention for the benefit of future students. Upon moving into West Town Green on August 20th, 2022, I was the first occupant of the 4-bedroom unit. Subsequently, roommate Jake, followed by Devin Rimmer, and lastly, Ian Murphy, a basketball player, joined the residence. Within the initial weeks, another basketball player, George Lee, who did not reside in the building, would show up to our apartment visiting Ian Murphy, often indulging in marijuana consumption. A couple of months later, Jake recorded Devin Rimmer entering his room and watching him sleep at night, which was reported and nothing was done, prompting Jake's relocation due to fear. Cody Bauer later replaced Jake and began hosting gatherings attended by George Lee, who would smoke marijuana and other substances. After the Thanksgiving break, I returned home and was accused of stealing money from my roommate, Cody Bauer, which was George Lee, who did the stealing. Despite being exonerated by surveillance footage, tensions escalated, resulting in various conflicts among roommates. Further issues arose, including missing food, foul talk amongst certain roommates about me, a lack of communication, and neglect of communal living space. January 20th, 2023, I went to a TA concerning the issues about the thermostat and was told that the thermostat comes off the wall and that the building manager, Justin, allows it because it is a common issue amongst roommates in the building. On February 12th, Malcolm Kennedy and I walked into my apartment and smelled the odor of marijuana, but did not see anyone smoking. I walked into my room, grabbed my game so we could play in the living room. Upon hooking up the game, Cody Bauer walks out of his room, which we had both noticed smoke exiting his room behind him. He sees both of us in the living room, and he's walking out the apartment. He takes the thermostat off the wall, and it made me upset because I was just reported and told to return back to the wall. 25 minutes later, Cody Bauer walked in with the same TA who told me it was okay to take the thermostat off the wall originally. And when he walked back to the living room, I started using profanity and yelling, asking him to put the thermostat back, which you could tell he was getting very angry and upset, culminating in a notice of suspension from West Town Green and MATC over false allegations. because he was upset pending a meeting with Michelle Lemaire. During the meeting, I was unfairly treated and denied the presence of an advocate and coerced into false confession under threat of academic repercussions. Despite attempts to provide my perspective, I was met with hostility and unfair treatment. The ordeal has adversely affected my academic pursuits and extracurricular activities, and has affected my decision to continue my education at the University of North Carolina A&T. I urge MATC to conduct a thorough investigation and foster an environment of fairness and accountability. Michelle Lemaire's unprofessional conduct and lack of empathy for students' concerns have left a lasting negative impact. I implore MATC to prioritize student well-being and ensure due process in disciplinary actions. My experience at MATC has been transformative and a learning experience, and I hope my feedback continues to contributes to a more supportive and inclusive environment for all students.
Thank you. So is there an Elsa Spears?
I'm Elsa.
Okay, and Mars Azici?
Hello, everyone. My name's Mars. My pronouns are they, them. I became a student at MATC beginning in September. I'm excited to be a part of the animation program. Unfortunately, prior to school, I was living in a situation that was unsafe. So Wendy, the social worker here, she was very helpful and continues to be very helpful. She helped me get into Westtown Green, the transitional housing. And then through there, I was able to get an apartment at Westtown Green. At first, everything was wonderful. I got along with my roommates, the environment and the cleanliness I was a big fan of, but unfortunately over time, the beginning of this year, January 5th, I got into an incident with one of my roommates, which is kind of alarming because beforehand, like I said, we were all very cordial with each other and even hung out with each other outside of school, outside of the apartment. But one miscommunication led to her attacking my personhood, not just as me being a Black Indigenous person, but me being queer, me being neurodiverse, and making fun of my religious practices and linguistic discrimination. And it was just really upsetting. I tried to reach out to the CA that was on duty at that time. He didn't offer any assistance except for me to just stay in my room with the door locked to avoid any further altercations or threats of violence. And said that the only way I would have any communication about next steps would be to wait for Monday when Justin, the property manager, would come. When Monday came, I met with Justin and he gaslit me about the incident that occurred from previous text messages that the roommate showed him that had nothing to do with the incident, saying that's why she had animosity against me and pretty much why she thought it was okay to discriminate against me and threaten me. But through this meeting with Justin, he also said that she admitted she was wrong, that she discriminated against me and apologized to him. But she has not spoken to me. That weekend, she did have other people try to stalk on my social media account and bully me. I brought this up to Justin as well, and he said, well, you were talking about her and you aggravated her through the older texts, but I had no idea about this because we never communicated. And I rebutted that with Justin and he started to get frustrated. He misgendered me in our meeting. And then he said, I guess the only way to solve this situation would be to move you to a different room, but I'll charge you an extra $300. 2 weeks go by. He finally emails me back January 19th and roughly says like, actually, we don't have any other roommates or rooms for you to transfer to. Hope all is well. That was the end of the email. He offered no conflict resolution. He offered no mediation to make the living situation better. It's been over a month now. I'm still living with this roommate. Throughout this time period, she has continued to try to instigate a reaction out of me by vulgar comments and just attacking my personhood or making fun of the different communities I'm a part of. be an intersect. I recently got to meet with Eva and Floyd Friday, Floyd being the safety officer and Eva being the vice president of the DEI office here. They were very helpful and listened to the situation and everything that occurred and offered to find a solution of some kind to this whole ordeal I've been dealing with. She also offered that they're going to be working on getting me out of my lease so that I can move into another apartment that will be more safe. I'm sorry that was long-winded, but overall, I just wanted to share that story so that hopefully in the future, more students can have a better experience with the management and Founders 3, possibly going through some kind of training. I do know a couple of different organizations. I'm an alumni of Public Allies for 2 years. So I've worked with multiple nonprofits that are willing to do DEI training, conflict resolution, and mediation. And I would be more than willing to share that information with everyone. And I just want everyone to be able to have a better experience and better outcome and not have to worry about their safety or hiding parts of themselves to be accepted. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And, but just to clarify, Elsa, you were representing D?
Yeah.
Was that correct? I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so thank you for addressing the board. Were there any other comments? Any other comments to the board? Thank you all for addressing the board and sharing your concerns. The board does not respond to any matter in adherence with the state of Wisconsin's open meetings law, which prevents a government body from discussing any specific item we are not publicly noticed to discuss. So I'll move to our next item, and that'll be approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion for approval of our regular board meeting, January 23rd, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Case and seconded by Director Mendieta Ramos. May we have, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Next, I would seek a motion for approval of the consent agenda. So moved.
Second.
So it's been moved by Director Owen Moore and seconded by, by Director Pence. I'm sorry, did one of our online? Okay. I'm going to have to balance this. I'm going to try and learn from Director Foley's style there. So I now have a motion for the consent agenda on the floor. Are there any questions and concerns on the motion? Any in the room? Any from board members online? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, that stands approved. Next, we'll move to board action items. First is our resolution F0302-02-24, authorizing the sale of 1.5 million general obligation promissory notes, series 2003-2004 of the Milwaukee Area Technical College District of Wisconsin. I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Director Case and very quietly seconded by Director Owen Moore. We have Jordan Masnica.
Masnica, yeah.
Masnica, I got
Close
very close.
enough.
I do apologize.
That's all right.
Who will walk us through this.
All right, hello, everybody. As you probably remember, Justin Fisher is usually here to go through this. But he tied up, just a busy time of year issuing debt for us. But I did hand this out for everybody. I know it was in your board packets as well, but I'm just gonna go ahead and go through this. So we took bids this morning at 9:30 a.m. For Series I, $1.5 million promissory notes. Happy to report that you received fantastic results. So it's 4 bids. With a very narrow spread of only 7 basis points or 0.07%. So a very competitive bidding. And that winning bid was just under 3% at 2.9985. So we're back under 3, which is fantastic. So for reference, it was last fall, rates were actually going up and we were closer to 4% in the issuance for the college. So the rates have come back down and you're able to take advantage of that with these bids. So Fidelity was the winner on this issue. They've won other issues for the college in previous times, and they're a frequent bidder. Actually, all four of the bidders are frequent bidders. Even going back to the last issuance, all four of the bidders on this issue bid on the last issue as well. So it's great that you have these returning bidders each month for your debt. And then also for our reference, the rate last month was 3.37%. So that's a good downward trend in interest rates. The next page is kind of going through some of the details for this issuance. As I said, it's Series I for $1.5 million. It will settle on March 13th. So that's when the college receives the funds. The repayment is the standard repayment, a 4-year repayment period with final maturity in 2028. And the first interest payment will be this June 1st. And then we did receive a rating from Moody's again, and it was affirmed at AA1 stable, just like recent issuance. We include the financing plan here, as we always do. I'm not going to go into detail here, but everything is as we've been planning for previously, in conjunction with Eva and her team. So everything is still on track there. And then finally, I included the rating rationale here. So your last issuance was a more in-depth rating analysis from Moody's, so a little quicker this time around. So I encourage you to look through this again. But spoiler, it's the same language from last time. So yeah, all in all, very happy with the results. Happy to answer any questions.
Board members have any questions? Hearing none. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I saw you had something circled and pointed on your sheet. Is that something that we need to know about? On page 4.
Right here?
Yeah.
Just the sale date for the next issuance. So that's your next action item.
Yeah.
I just wanted to note the sale date for my reference.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions online?
No.
Okay, very good. And then we need a roll call for this, please.
Director Burris,
Aye.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Maura Mukunde,
Aye.
Director Najib,
Aye.
Director Owen Moore,
Aye.
Director Pence,
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. Next is our resolution F0303-02-24, authorizing the issuance of 1.5 million general obligation promissory notes series 2003, 2004 J of the Milwaukee Area Technical College District, Wisconsin, and I would seek a motion for that. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by, gosh, they're like arm wrestling each other. They're moved by Director Owen Moore and seconded by Director Mendieta Ramos. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? As you know, this is our regular monthly authorizing. Okay, hearing none. Any questions online? Hearing none, we'll need roll call, please.
Director Case.
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos.
Aye.
Director Maura Mukunde,
Aye.
Director Najib,
Aye.
Director Owen Moore,
Aye.
Director Pence,
Aye.
Okay, we'll talk tomorrow.
Director Burris,
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Next, we'll move on to our policy review, and we'll have General Counsel Sherry Terrell Webb join us. The policy in front of you tonight is a review of a current policy for our outside legal counsel. And this is a review first, so the time for us to take a look at it. It will come back to us in a month for our approval. Would you like to walk us through this?
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me here. Today I'm bringing to you the review of the policy related to services of outside legal counsel. I will note for the board that there are a couple of changes. One is to allow me to be able to hire outside counsel via my own representation instead of going through RFP. One of the issues is that in coming on with MATC, I discovered that because of the policy, it was difficult if there were conflicts or I needed to hire independent hearing officers, that having to go out to RFP with the timeliness of those responsibilities would make it extremely difficult. I will note in this policy that I do maintain the authority to issue an RFP if I determine that that becomes necessary. That is one of the requirements for WTCS in their manual. They do indicate that they will ask that I review how much we're spending and provide a report. And should it be determined that RFP might be a way to create more efficiencies, then they would ask us to consider doing an RFP. So I did maintain the authority to, in addition to selecting, go through RFP. Additionally, I will note that I will be making clarifications before the final vote to indicate that the board will be able to issue an RFP to select its own board counsel. And again, that's in accordance with WTCS authority. Any questions?
Questions in the room? Any questions on this policy? Any questions from the friends online?
I just wondering if we still can get competitive bids this way. If we depend on our in-house counsel, how can we compare it to outside counsel?
Well, we do retain the ability to go through RFP, but in some instances I will need to hire, and that is why I'm requesting the change. And it will again be reviewed by WTCS, and if they find that the billings are coming in substantially above what they are, they will ask that I go back to the RFP system.
So for clarification, sorry, this is Director Burris. I couldn't find the toggle to raise my hand. But for clarification, we are not doing the RFP, or we are?
I'm requesting that we allow me to be able to select counsel as needed. Another issue that has come up is that for our insurance coverage, we actually have asked law firms to apply to be on the panel. However, under the current way the policy is written, I cannot select to use those attorneys, even though they've been asked to be on our insurance panel. And that puts me in a little difficult situation because we've asked them, you know, to be a part and to partner with us in certain instances, and I can't use them under the current policy.
Can I?
Dr. Najib, sure.
So we can use them if they can give us competitive bid. But I think we need to at least to get one or two bids just to make sure that we have this edge to choose which one is better for us. If we just gonna assign it to them because they are involved with us, then whatever they charge, they're gonna be. We don't know what really the fair charge until we compare it with other bids. So I prefer that to have still have the ability, at least maybe we can make it routinely. You can get 2 or 3 bids yourself, and then you compare it, and then you select whoever give you the best bid.
Like that.
Any other comments from board
I would-
members? Director Foley?
Okay.
Oh, Director
Director
Burris, you got your hand up?
Yeah, Foley can go.
I think that we're being asked to review a policy without sufficient context. One of the items of context is there are some of these occasions where outside counsel is needed on a very quick basis, and there simply is not time to go through a normal RFP process, which is why you try to have some people that you have on an approved panel and can go to. Now, I don't know how much of what we're talking about in this policy relates to that or precisely when those situations occur, but there has to be some flexibility in order to be able to act within the timeframes needed particularly with some of the HR issues that come up where we need to have outside counsel doing an investigation or something. We can't wait 30 days or 60 days while an RFP process works its way out. The second thing is, I think that as the language is currently drafted, there is some confusion about how and, well, specifically how the board can select and retain counsel, as opposed to going through the college's general counsel to retain counsel. And I think that needs some clarification. I would be happy to address that particular issue with Sherry offline so we can talk through where I think those issues are. But I think that before we are asked to approve this change in policy, we need to have a more fulsome explanation about when we hire counsel, what the circumstances are, why we should have to or not have to go through an RFP process in any particular circumstances.
Director Burris?
Yeah, I see that Deep has a follow-up question. I'll let him go before me.
Oh, sure, Dr. Najib.
Yeah, always there's exception to the rules. If something really urgent, definitely we can, we don't have to go through the RFP process. But if it's for the routine thing as a policy, I think we should have the ability to get RFPs.
Okay, now Director Burris?
Thank you. So my question is, how often do we review the policy of this, and how often do we check in to see whether or not any conflicts?
So I'll take a
sorry.
moment. Go ahead. Did you want more? Did you have another question?
No, it was conflicts of interest. I figured I should put that on the end.
Would you, in terms of how we deal with the conflicts of interest in this particular matter?
No. Whether or not inside counsel has a conflict of interest with the college.
So to answer your first question, I can help a bit. There is, as you will recall, you sat in I think a couple of the meetings, the board had a task force that reviewed a number of our policies over the course of the last year, and including this policy, and made a few clarifications on the policy to clarify the board's ability to have conversation with the board's outside counsel. This is a different change coming out of the general counsel's office that she's requesting in order to give her some flexibility for certain situations, which I think I think we've heard a number of questions about in terms of bringing us more clarification on why we would need to not use the RFP process, and also being a little more contextual and understanding what times we would need exceptions to that process.
Correct.
Okay, so those are the questions that I've heard raised here, and a little bit on the process. We do as a board review the bylaws section of the policies every 5 years, I believe. Director Burris, did you have another question?
Yes, I maybe didn't properly ask the question that I was seeking. How often do we review the conflict of interest with our outside counsel to ensure there's no conflict of interest? And sorry, I didn't have a pleasure of sitting on that other policy committee that you're speaking of.
Well, attorneys generally check conflict of interest on a regular basis, depending on who is the respondent in a particular matter. And so it just depends on what the matter is and what law firm it's going to. And sometimes it's that I know what's going on internally and I know that there is a clear conflict. And so in those instances, I have to be able to hire counsel to represent.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that last bit.
I said, it's in those instances, especially when I know there's already a conflict, that I need to be able to hire counsel to represent the college.
Okay, so process says that the attorney is supposed to inform MATC, the college, that there may be a conflict of interest, and then you step in some sort. So that means that we do not do like a mid-year review or anything like that.
As far as conflicts of interest with law firms, no, it's not mid-year. It's based on who the client on the other side is.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Does that answer your question? Okay,
Yes.
I have some questions in the room and then we'll get to you, Director Foley, and I think I had Director Owen Moore first.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's possible to do an RFP process to approve a slate of like firms that could be used because they fit within a certain rate. And that's one of the things we do. We have certain law firms we can go to because they've been approved by the board and have the right amount. So I wonder if that's one way to speed up the process, but also still have that ahead of time RFP process to. And then you have those people that you can go to quickly.
And Director Moore.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of what Director Najib was saying is that he wanted to make sure that we were not usurping or avoiding an RFP process for larger contracts or whatever kinds of contracts where we could get multiple bids and would perhaps be potentially what's a good phrase, doing away with the lowest bid, if that makes sense, and having those who would come to us in an attempt to bypass the process, just say, choose me instead of going through this RFP process. That's the way I heard him interpreting it, and that's the way that I heard it. And are we making sure that we're not doing that?
So in prior practice, what I've done is I do ask a number of different firms for information on their hourly rate as a requirement under WTCS. Before I would even be able to consider them, I have to know what the rate is. And I specifically have to spell out what it is they're being asked to do. And so I would never, because I know that part of my job is being fiscally responsible, just pick somebody because I thought, oh, you know, they're what we need, when in actuality, there's somebody who can do the same job just as well. So I check pricing, but it's not a full RFP.
What I've noticed, if I may, Madam Chair, what I've noticed is that, not directing this at you, however, those who would be involved in being picked in an RFP process, if they can avoid it, they will. If they can just be chosen straight up, they will. And so there are very crafty ways of them doing so, not saying that they could get past you. However, I just know that there are those who try to make attempts to avoid RFP processes, and I was trying to get the language to ensure that we weren't allowing people to do so.
Got it. Okay.
Thanks.
I have Director Pence.
Can you clarify just a little bit further on what you mentioned about there was attorneys that you couldn't use because of the way the language was worded?
So for our insurance, when I refer claims out to our insurance company, we have what's called a panel of attorneys.
Okay.
That panel are sometimes in law firms that the insurance company has said, we think you should be on our panel. And I've checked, and in our case, the ones that are on our insurance panel are law firms that we specifically asked to be on the panel. But they may not have been referred through or gone through the RFP process. And so I did receive the insurance company, DMI, did receive a complaint from an attorney that said I was put on the panel, but I've never had the opportunity to be chosen because they didn't go through the RFP process. So they weren't chosen because we already had attorneys through the RFP process. Does that make sense?
Okay. And it's the way the bylaws are written that dictates that?
Yes, the current policy says that it has to be through RFP.
Director Mendieta-Reynolds.
If I understand this correctly, you're not avoiding the RFP process. You just want the flexibility of being able to hire somebody quickly if needed.
Correct.
So we're not avoiding the RFP process, which I
No.
think is the confusion here.
No, we're not.
Okay. So, and you have a budget
Yes.
per particular case or incident?
No, it's just a
It's just
budget
a
for
general
legal
budget?
representation.
Okay, so you're not avoiding the RFP process, you just want that flexibility.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, online, Director Foley, you have been waiting patiently.
A couple of things. One is to address Director Burris's question. The law firm and the individual lawyers are required before accepting any specific representation to check for conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest and bring them to the attention of the client. So that happens immediately every time. I know how we do that. I know how every major firm in the city does that. I know how Michael Best does that. So that is dealt with all the time automatically. The second thing is this concept of insurance company panel counsel. I haven't looked at these insurance policies, so I don't know what they say about this, but there are usually an option for the insurance company written into the policy that they can either direct the litigation, which includes selecting counsel, so long as they don't have a conflict of interest, from their panel of accepted qualified lawyers. Or they can decline to take the defense, or they can waive the right to direct the defense and let the college pick their own counsel. So there are lots of variations here that really can't be reduced to a simple formula of do the RFP. You don't usually do RFPs when you have an insurance company which has panel counsel that they've approved and they are asking you to accept one of them. Sometimes that depends on who's paying them. If the insurance company has the duty to defend as part of their coverage or in addition to their coverage, then you really don't want to go outside of their panel unless you have need of a specific firm or specific expertise, or there's a problem in the relationship with the insurer. So again, I would suggest that we be careful about trying to squeeze the selection of counsel across a broad range of matters in a lot of different circumstances and try to squeeze that into a standard. We always have to do an RFP process. It's not a good idea. It could really come back to haunt, to bite you if you find out about litigation shortly before an answer is due. You don't have time to do those things. So I think we need to recraft this policy in a general way that talks about when we retain counsel, we retain Michael Best for, Sherry, you'll have to help me here, is it 1, 2, or 3 year period? I've forgotten how that works. And then we go outside again and we do an RFP process to get bids from other law firms that might be desirous of doing all of what Michael Best does, some of what Michael Best does, things that are done by other people. So there are lots of checks and balances here. And I think Sherry highlighted something which I didn't know existed until this moment, but is really helpful. And that is if the state board system, the state system board is actually going to monitor and compare fees incurred under an RFP process versus a non-RFP process and alert us if they think there is an issue. That's really good to have an outside entity or person do that. There's always a problem there in that they don't really know what these individual matters are about. And so you might end up spending more in one billing period or 1 year than you had before under a different process, but that could be because of the nature of the matter. That's all I have.
Do I have any more hands? I'm going to make one comment that one of my concerns, I actually really appreciate all the comments. I think we've had some very good suggestions that will help to give the board some comfort in knowing that we are monitoring the expense and following the rules, but also be able to give your office agility to move forward when you need to. I was also concerned because this policy originally, the way it was written, when you look at the first page of what was given to us, really a lot of it spoke to the board's outside legal counsel, which is not a legal counsel that you would pick because it belongs to the board and exists at the board's level. And I think making sure that the language is clear that the board still RFPs for its own counsel and has that relationship, and that that is a separate piece than the general counsel's office, I think would be also an important distinction.
Yeah.
Any other comments online? Comments in the room? If not, I think you got a lot of work there, a lot of good conversation for.
Yes, and I'll get you comments well before the next board meeting.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to reports. I get to pretend to be Director Foley and give the president's report. I'm looking to see if he was grimacing online when I said that. There you go.
Directors, the chair's report.
That's right. So it's the chair's report. So, okay, first, Wisconsin Technical College District Boards Association spring meeting, which includes the annual election and the board of directors meeting, will be held at Nicolay College in Rhinelander, March 22nd and 23rd. Educational topics will include mental health, competency-based education, and tribal connections. Lodging will be available at Holiday Acres Resort. I mean, if that doesn't sound like an up north place, I mean, seriously. Please check in with Beth or Peter if you're interested in registering. I have attended Technical College Boards Association meetings recently. They are always, and in fact, with several colleagues in the room here, and they're always very interesting. The Higher Learning Commission, after the adjournment of our regular business meeting this evening, we're going to be joined by Tom Bordenkircher, who is Vice President of Accreditation Relations at the Higher Learning Commission. Tom's going to spend not a long, folks, it'll be a brief period of time. It'll be late in the evening. But he's going to spend some time emphasizing the importance of maintaining accreditation for the college and the role specifically that the board plays in ensuring the quality of an institution through its governance structures. Next, we have the Magical Black Tears Museum exhibition. It's being held from, it started February 16th. It's going to run through March 8th in our MATC Create Gallery, which if you haven't looked is on the first floor of the M building. The exhibit allows visitors to watch films, read, write, create, pretend, play, and problem solve in a fun setting that shows how everyday people take direct action to make the world free from racism. The gallery itself is open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. and I encourage board members to check it out. Our update on the presidential search, just mostly a reminder about some upcoming dates. The prospect review meeting with Greenwood Asher will be held March 19th from 7 to 10 p.m. At this meeting, the board will be selecting candidates for preliminary review and discussing interview strategies. We would prefer board members to be present in person, if at all possible, but a Zoom link will be available. Round one interviews with leading candidates will be conducted with Greenwood Asher on April 3rd and 4th via Zoom. Those will all be on Zoom. We would prefer if board members, again, could be in the room together and just be talking to the candidates on Zoom, but a Zoom link will be available for board members. The reference feedback meeting will be held on April 18th from 5 until 7 p.m. The board will be given a preliminary report and recommendations will be made for the second round of interviews, which will be held during the week of April 22nd. Again, please try and keep these dates on your calendar. We really prefer for board members to meet in person, but for any of these events, a Zoom link will be available.
My calendar invite be sent to?
I believe calendar invites were sent out for all of these.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you should have gotten them from Beth. If for some reason you don't have them, please let Beth or Peter know. The one other item I want to mention is I had the honor to be sort of representing MATC along with a couple of staff people at a meeting from Climate United that was held here, and it was a national group that is looking at some of the federal funding that is going to be coming into our state through a number of the new federal acts. There is a potential for funding for MATC here, both for our facilities and our training. And it was a robust meeting and a very exciting group, including representatives from the mayor's office and the governor's office and our own folks who work on sustainability in the district. So it was really interesting. Any questions on my report? Otherwise, we'll move on. Any questions?
Can you give those dates one more time?
I sure can. For the presidential search?
Yes.
Sure. March 19th will be the prospect review meeting. Okay, so that's where you're going to take a look at all the prospects who the search firm feels meet the criteria that we set. That'll be for a preliminary review, and we'll also be discussing interview strategies at that time. The second will be the round one interviews with leading candidates. And that is April 3rd and 4th. And then there's a reference feedback meeting. So after that first round, we do more in-depth referencing. And that feedback will be April 18th from 5 till 7 p.m. And then the second round interviews will be held during the week of April 22nd. Now, you will notice a few of those have very specific times and a few of them don't, because some of it will depend on how many candidates we are deciding to interview in the first round, how many candidates we are bringing to campus in the second round in our public phase of this process, and our availability and the candidates' availability. But as much as you can keep those days and those windows open, it will help us with flexibility with the candidates' schedules as well.
And that April 3rd and 4th is during the all day, or is it evening, or?
We're asking you to set the day aside.
Just it's
And, you know, as we get closer to the dates, we'll hopefully be able to narrow all that in for people. Any questions online? Any other in the room? Okay, we'll then move on to the president's report. Dr. Meyer.
Okay, thank you, and good evening, board members, faculty, staff, student in our community. I'm proud to announce that MATC was recently recognized as a top producing Fulbright Scholar institution for the 2023-24 academic year. Top producing institutions are those recognized for having the highest number of accepted applicants to the Fulbright U.S. student and Fulbright U.S. Scholar programs in 23-24. Fulbright is the United States government's flagship international academic exchange program. It's the largest and most recognized. It's highly prestigious. Fulbright scholars are faculty, researchers, administrators, and established professionals accepted into this very, very competitive program to teach, conduct research, and carry out professional projects in affiliation with institutes abroad. So MATC is only one of 12 honorees in the associate and baccalaureate associate institution category, and only one of 3 technical colleges. We are pleased to have received this honor that represents the commitment and dedication of our faculty and staff, and proud to say we have a former participant. Barb Cannell is here. She participated, and we had a faculty member this year, Peter Brzezinski, participate. I also wanted to let you know, and you did receive a report, that we are working on the issues with students at Westtown Green. We do have a team working on it. They are in the process of meeting with students and working on the issues with the students to make sure that they are supported and that they get to resolution. It was also a very busy time for M-Cubed, and that's our partnership with UW-Milwaukee and MPS. So on January 25th, I joined our partners, Keith Posley, who's superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, and Dr. Moni, chancellor of UW-Milwaukee, to promote Milwaukee Direct Admit. And this really helps MPS students to seamlessly apply both to MATC and to UWM. It's an online form. It's really just a one-pager. It's free of charge. And what's so great about this is that the transcripts are just sent. So before some of you know, it's a very difficult process to get those transcripts. And so this really simplifies that process and makes it easy for students to participate in college life. On February 13th, I reunited with my colleagues and the mayor to champion FAFSA completion. That's the financial aid form, federal financial aid. We're trying to make the process, as you know, from the government, it's already streamlined. It's been a little bumpy, so it will be streamlined. It will get better. It'll get easier, thanks to the FAFSA Simplification Act. And that we are hoping that will increase the number of applicants who apply for FAFSA, because there's a lot of students who are eligible, but this process has been onerous in the past and then has prevented many students from getting through it. And so this should make it a lot easier as they get through the process in the future. That concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Martin? Great. Okay, legislative matters. Vice President Laura Bray. And you do have a report, you should have a report at your desk, and I believe it's.
And then
linked up.
Rainey is joining us, so Rainey's gonna go through state and I will update on federal. So why don't, Rainey, you take it away on state legislation or pending legislation?
Great, thank you. And it got darker here in my office and sorry, I'll try to adjust my light so I don't look like I'm sitting in a dark closet here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. You have a written report at your seats, I believe, this evening. I will go through and highlight several items as it relates to state matters and then defer back to Laura with some federal updates. The Wisconsin State Assembly, they adjourned last Thursday evening. I saw a big thumbs up there. It was a late night. I think you guys got out of there right around midnight after a very, very long day. So the State Assembly stands adjourned, barring, there's always a little bit of an exception, right? Something could happen, but for the most part, we expect the State Assembly to be done for the year. And the State Senate will come back in one more day. It's expected to be March 12th. During that last floor period there before what we would expect the state Senate to also adjourn. So any pending legislation that needed to move through both houses, if it did not move through the assembly last week, for all intensive purposes, it has died for the legislative session and will need to be reintroduced next session. I do have a very brief summary. Of course, I know we all, see the headlines and have access to various different news sources, but of course, one very big piece of political news that will impact the next legislative session, the 25-26 legislative session, is that Governor Evers signed maps that the legislature passed. He signed those into law last week. So Wisconsin Act 94 has now enacted new legislative boundaries for the fall. Sorry, that just popped up here. For the fall election, the short version of what this means is that there are going to be more competitive seats. There are a number of paired incumbents. I think there are about 30 paired incumbents in the assembly, right around a dozen in the Senate. So looking at, the paired incumbents, the number of incumbent retirements for different reasons, people are running for different offices, they were paired and choosing not to run, or they're just simply retiring. Again, there are some open seats that were created under the new maps, not currently with, in the assembly, they don't have incumbents in them. So the result of the maps and some of these other dynamics, really the outcome will mean that Republicans, because they hold the majority in both the Senate and Assembly, very comfortable majorities, they will lose seats under the new maps, just looking at the boundaries. And again, these other factors, Democrats are positioned to gain seats. There's still a number of competitive seats, of course. So, I say it's a toss up in terms of who controls the legislature, but certainly what is guaranteed is it's going to be a very different body for a number of reasons heading in the 25-26 legislative session. So that, of course, is just important because we're all impacted by this with what we do and how we advocate in Madison. Certainly this means new opportunities, different opportunities, new faces, new relationships. There will be a number of new individuals that I expect we'll need to get to know in southeastern Wisconsin in particular. And we'll have a better sense of who's running in those seats in June when it's official, after nomination papers have been circulated and turned in. So just a quick overview there as we kind of move through the rest of the year. As it relates to some standalone legislation, I'm just going to highlight a couple. Happy to take questions on anything, of course, on this document. I tried to make it very concise for this evening. Senate Bill 367, that has been signed into law, so it's Act 95. It relates to guaranteed admissions. As the bill was originally drafted, it included both UW system as well as the technical college system. We know that our admission process is different than UW system. That said, there was an amendment to remove technical colleges from that formally. So again, we are not impacted by that. I will say, of course, there's going to be a process in place and how at the K-12 level, the top 5 and top 10% of students are calculated, but that's something that we'll see further down the road. Assembly Bill 545, I've raised this in prior meetings because it impacts technical college district board membership. We've looked at it and it doesn't appear to impact us at all currently. The legislation would require that a district board member be a citizen of the United States. The bill's enrolled, which means it's just moving through the process for the governor to consider. I have not lobbied directly to the governor on this on behalf of the college. The technical college system has been more engaged. But I do think it's something that will be considered with the lens of looking at a possible veto for that legislation. Skipping down to Assembly Bill 551. This is a bill that I may defer to our attorney here if there are specific questions, but it relates to freedom of speech and press and school-sponsored media, specifically for freedom of speech for student publications. The bill itself has bipartisan support and was modeled after legislation that has moved through the process in other states. There were some technical concerns and some cleanup language that needed to be attached as an amendment to this bill that would better clarify what institution-sponsored media would mean. So for example, it's institution-sponsored media, maybe a student has been asked to contribute to that, how is that kind of controlled and balanced with free speech as it relates to, student content. Again, very much simplifying it. But we were able to work with our partners in the higher education space to get an amendment to provide that clarification needed. It's already now passed the Assembly. Senate action is pending. It still needs to go through the Senate committee, but there still would be time for the Senate to consider this legislation and move it forward. But again, it's been amended. We've looked at the amendment and it provides the clarity we were seeking. And it also is a bipartisan supported proposal. Assembly Bill 554 it relates to, again, race-based admissions and higher education programs, how it was drafted. The authors leaned on the US Supreme Court decision based on admissions in higher education space. This bill, though, however, addresses teacher minority loan programs, grants, other things that are actually not put at risk as a result of that Supreme Court race. Or excuse me, that was on my mind, Supreme Court decision. And so they're still moving the bill through the process. Again, this is one that the Assembly has passed, Senate action is pending. I think the governor would, take a long look at this one if it were to reach his desk. And then also just kind of partnering, moving down to Assembly Bill 1065. This was introduced very late in session. It has passed the Assembly, again, Senate action pending. But this has to do with kind of that ongoing discussion on DEI, loyalty pledges, as it relates to faculty hiring, student government positions, etc. So again, very much simplifying it. But that's something that will move the process. And I think the governor could take a look at that one as well. So those are the ones I wanted to highlight this evening. I have on here a note just to speak on rehired annuitants in general, because I think it is of interest to MATC for a number of reasons. There have been a number of proposals introduced over the last now almost decade to revisit this issue. Currently, right now, there are prohibitions on organizations like MATC, state government, local governments, etc. You can't easily rehire an individual who has retired and has been collecting their pension, which was part of their compensation package while they were employed. This has become a big problem for local governments, school districts, technical colleges. One we often hear in the technical college space is in the public safety programs. It's very difficult to find individuals to teach those programs. They often are retired police and fire, public safety individuals. School districts are obviously stressed to find teachers, and in high need positions, sometimes they have to go back to individuals who have that expertise. But they're not able to. So there have been efforts to look at this, to move something forward. I would say nothing clean has advanced. Things have sort of gotten watered down to the point where, we'll see if it works. There was one bill that was passed last week relating to rehired annuitants. Assembly Bill 671. It was amended so substantially, it would only allow for law enforcement rehired annuitants. And as I looked at the amendment, I don't know that technical colleges will actually even be an eligible employer. It would have to be a law enforcement agency. So I just raised this as, again, more of an FYI. I think there's a lot of energy to try to continue to address this, to look at workforce needs. But I wanted to flag this one because on the surface, it appeared that perhaps it could have been helpful in a small way, but I'm not sure that that is the case once looking at that amendment. So those are what I wanted to highlight this evening. Happy to take any questions, comments. I thought I saw a hand pop up, but I'll defer to the chair on that.
Okay, so I see a big hand there, Director Foley.
Two quick things. One is, it seems to me that this last topic that you talked about is important to the college, but the bills that are working their way through are not helpful to us. Are we actively lobbying to get relief from these, you used a term I hadn't heard before, rehired annuitants, I think it was?
Yes.
Are we advocating for something like that that would actually make a difference?
Yeah, I would say the Assembly Bill 1018 would have been the bill, that I would have liked to see go further. The technical college system is registered in support. I've talked to Layla about that. So yes, the short answer is yes. I think that, again, looking at next legislative session, there could be more opportunities to finally address this issue. There is one individual in the state Senate who is just vehemently opposed to kind of looking at this and revisiting some of the prohibitions on the hiring of these individuals. It's been very difficult to get past that. So I would say, yes, we are. The technical college system is, everyone in the public school space, local governments, you name it, would really like to, get these prohibitions lifted so that it's easier for individuals to come back in to fill positions across, the sector. For example, thinking about, again, those high need public education positions. Local governments, areas of expertise. It's so restrictive, it's even hard sometimes to come back as a contracted employee. So yes, I think for years, there's been a lot of advocacy in this space. It's just been one of those issues that has been incredibly difficult to get past some individuals, because even though it was separate from Act 10, the prohibitions happened around that same time, and it's very much viewed as sort of part of Act 10 in my professional assessment and how I have seen this issue. So I do think that as we look to next session, when we might have more narrow majorities, or maybe one house could potentially flip, these types of things become a little bit easier, because more negotiations have to happen to sometimes get budgets signed, bills passed, etc. So I'd like to think that maybe perhaps next session will have better traction finally. It has just been incredibly difficult, even though it seems like such an easy thing.
Is the individual you did not identify by name that is adamant about not allowing this in one of the districts that's been remapped?
Yes, but I don't know what that outcome will be, but yes.
Okay. The second question was about your statement that the bill that I think it's passed the legislature that would require that members of the boards of the technical colleges be U.S. citizens. You said it would not affect us. What you mean by that is that no one on the board currently is not a U.S. citizen, but it would be a requirement that any board member would have to satisfy.
Yes, yes, good clarification, yes.
And
Have
there been any hearings about why this would be a good idea or a bad idea, or was it just thrown in the hopper and made its way through?
It was thrown in the hopper because there is one technical college.
Yeah, but having direct conflicts between one immigrant and another. Yeah.
So it was thrown in the hopper for that reason.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions online? Or questions in the room before we move on to Laura Bray? And Laura, you wanted to add?
Sure. Chair Foley, do you want me to go ahead and start?
A report on the ACCT meeting?
Yeah.
On the MLS?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So Chair Foley and I went to the National Legislative Summit that happens every year, where we have people from community colleges throughout the country that descend on Washington and make sure everybody knows the importance of both community colleges and technical education. We actually ended up meeting the Wisconsin Technical College District Board Association arranges some meetings with representatives that we all meet together. And then typically we meet with staff in our own district just to talk about and flesh out issues that might be happening in our own district. So the entire District Board Association met with Senator Tammy Baldwin and Congressman Mike Gallagher. So we got a sense of both what's happening in the House and the Republican side, and then what's happening in the Senate from Tammy Baldwin. We also met with the District Board Association Executive Director, Layla Merrifield, and with staff of the Department of Education, just to talk through a little bit about our promise programs and our scholarship programs, because they were just wondering how those are structured. And so we were able to talk with them in some detail. And then myself and Director Foley met with representatives from Gwen Moore's office, from Representative Fitzgerald, Representative Stiles' office, and from a person at Senator Baldwin's office. And so the things we covered were largely understanding a couple of key things. One is we wanted to gauge where it's at in terms of the support for expansion of Pell eligibility. There has been some talk for some time about increasing Pell eligibility for individuals that are taking short-term workforce training programs. So in our case, some childcare programs, some IT, truck driving, and even some healthcare programs. If they're just doing the short-term focused, it's not covered by Pell. I don't know if I can knock on wood, but it seems like that actually may pass, possibly, either this session or next. And there seems to be bipartisan support. There is one piece of it, however, that there's a provision in the markup of I believe it is both the Senate and the House, that would negatively impact the medical college. Because they've they've worked to try to have a provision to actually pay for the offset of that by essentially like taxing or doing an assessment toward large endowments at universities that use Pell. The medical college has a non-related endowment that was not funded by donors. It's not for the purpose of scholarships. That's the Advancing Healthier Wisconsin endowment that negatively impacts them. So every single person that we talked to from the Wisconsin delegation said, we're trying to understand if there's an opportunity to do a carve out and for the medical college so that they're not hurt by this. But everyone that we met with said, we generally support this. And they're calling it the workforce Pell is how they're talking about it on Capitol Hill. That probably was the one that we talked about the most. We also talked about increased investments to everything from Perkins to WIOA and other apprenticeship programs. And then we talked also about improvement for student access and success programs. So C Campus is a program specifically for students' childcare costs, and there's some moves there to try to increase the amount of funding for that, and then also SNAP for food assistance for students. So I think what we were able to share more than anything was our students are like individual student stories, but also give a sense of some of the things that we're seeing when students are getting more holistic support, whether it be from holistic approaches to retention coaches to holistic support in terms of scholarship assistance. We're seeing much better results, and that we just shared some of those. We also talked a little bit about the upcoming appropriation cycle, and they haven't completed their last year's budget, so they're trying to get through the continuing resolution that should happen soon, and then starting to think about the fiscal year 25 budget. So I think we had good meetings, good discussions, and good relationship building with staff and with the members themselves. Did I miss anything, Director Foley?
Just one thing, I didn't catch it if you addressed it, and that is we had a meeting with some people from the Department of Education where we discussed the possibility of a visit to our campus by one of the undersecretaries. And there is some interest in that, and they're trying to define just what that interest is, but it sounded like it was something they were very interested in doing.
Mm-hmm. Any questions there?
Any questions? Questions in the room? Questions online? Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Sorry I couldn't join you.
Thank you.
Next we'll move to our enrollment report. And I'd like to have Philip King and Eva Paulus Martinez, our Executive Vice President and Vice President of Enrollment and Retention, join us. Or
Just
yes. Or just Dr. Paulus Martinez.
Yes, I had to bring this paper with because it feels like a heat wave in February. Okay, good evening, Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Baker, Chair Foley, and members of the district board. Today's enrollment presentation, I will provide an overview of enrollment from an FTE perspective, headcounts, and also retention. Please know that as I navigate throughout the presentation, I will also be providing up-to-date information as of February 27th. The presentation slides were given to you as of February 19th, and I have additional information to share with you. As of today, February 27th, we have attained 3,771 FTEs for spring 2024. This is a 99.6% of our budgeted spring goal. So we have met 99.6% of that goal. Our spring budgeted goals, as you can see, is 3,784. What this means is that we are 13 FTEs away from meeting our spring 2024 goal. So we have to keep the momentum going. For a year-to-date FTE goal, as of today as well, February 27th, we have attained 8,453 FTEs. For a year-to-date FTE goal, our goal is 8,500. So what this means is that we are 47 FTEs away from meeting our goal. The numbers that I am providing, again, are numbers as of today, February 27th. And the numbers that you have in the screen were provided to you from a week ago. One of the main things to consider at an MATC is that our enrollment numbers fluctuate day by day. 1 week, it could be in the 3,700. The following week, it could be 3,800. So I'm providing updated information. One of the highlights to consider when it comes to our FTEs is that the generation of application numbers at MATC. For our spring 2024 applications, we actually received over 1,000 applications more than last spring 2023. So that's a good leading indicator that is also helping increase the FTE goals. When it comes to our application completion, we know that our admissions team is responsible for receiving the applications and completing them. Our admissions team completed 794 more applications for spring 2024 than last spring semester. So that is a significant increase, giving us a total increase in application completion of 34.6, which is fantastic. Overall, our new program applications also increased by 17%, which is also a leading indicator and also a factor that influences overall FTEs. When we compare to last year around this time, we have also retained more students. We have retained 3.7% more students than from fall semester to spring semester. We know that when it comes to our FTEs make up for new students, continuing students, and returning students. We continue to implement just-in-time strategies to keep the momentum going and encourage our students to continue to register for classes. For example, our students still have opportunities to register. Our 8-week March classes are coming up, so we have classes beginning at the beginning and mid of March as well. Next slide, please. This slide shows the weekly funnel that I was referring to earlier. As you can see, by week, our numbers are changing. And I have become a numbers person. So I am actually checking these numbers on a daily basis to see where we are. And every day they fluctuate. And since I joined my role back in October, I've been seeing the numbers increase month by month, week by week, and also day by day. So it's a very interesting way of looking at FTEs and the funnel. The highlight that I like to highlight in this slide in terms of, can you go back to total FTEs, Beth, please? I believe is the previous, that one. Thank you so much. One area that I like to highlight is that when you look at spring 2020, spring 2023, and spring 2024, as of today, we actually have 203 more FTEs today when we compare our numbers today from last year, spring 2023. That is a really big increase from last year, and we will keep that momentum going. When it comes to the 203 increase in FTEs from last spring semester, that accounts for 5.55% increase in FTEs as of today. Next slide, please. This is our head count population of students. And again, this includes all students taking classes at MATC. I often utilize the term FTE, head counts and enrollment. And I often have to remind myself and our teams that when we talk about FTEs, we need to also think about the students behind the FTE. So our students are not just a number, and we often remind ourselves that our students bring to us a wide range of experiences and backgrounds. So I'd like to remind me in this presentation too, that when we see the FTEs, we're also talking about our wonderful MATC students. Again, that information on the screen was shared with you as of February 19th, and I have the updated head count as of today that accounts for 17,102. So it increased from the last time I shared this information with you. Compared to last spring semester or last term, spring 2023, we actually have increased the head count by 774 head counts, which is awesome, awesome to see. This is something that we need to recognize and celebrate. I am a big promoter of celebrating the small wins. So this is something that we need to continue to celebrate at MATC. If we look at our spring 2020, we are still lagging behind spring 2020, but we are actually doing a lot better from last spring as well. So we know the head count trends, when we look at this overall chart, really tell us that MATC is still in the game. So what that means is that we continue to see enrollments, we continue to see students coming to us, and we need to continue to cater to the needs of our adult learners and other student populations so that we can continue to meet our goals. Next slide, please. I keep telling myself that this is one of my favorite slides. Why? Because it really showcases some of the demographics at MATC, and it showcases our student body in terms of gender diversity and also race and ethnicity. Again, we have 17,102 head counts as of today. And also, you know, similar to previous months, about 60% of our students are women identifying and about 40% are men identifying students. One observation that I'd like to point out for us to consider too is some of the changes that we are seeing within the race and ethnicity demographics. If we pay attention to, for example, our American Indian, Native American students and our Asian population, those are two populations that for the spring 2024 semester have slightly decreased in enrollment. For example, when you look at our American Indian, Native American students, we are down by 19 students for spring 2020. And I point that out because the Native American community is already a very small community percentage-wise. So any decrease in that population is gonna take us even back farther. So I wanted to point that out. Also with the Asian student population, we are down by 2 students for the spring semester. And when it comes to enrollment and retention, I don't like to see that. I wanna make sure that we continue to make progress in making sure that all students are enrolling and succeeding at MATC. Other observations that you can make, that we can also see in the data, is that our white student enrollment has increased slightly by 0.82 percentage points. And the majority of the growth in enrollment at MATC has been from our Black, African American, and Hispanic student populations. For example, our enrollment for Black students increased by 7.7% for this spring semester. And for Hispanic students, enrollment increased by 12%. These trends, again, are very similar to what's happening in the state of Wisconsin, in the Midwest, and also across the United States. It is critical that we continue to recruit, retain, and graduate all students with a special focus on Black and Hispanic students. Next slide, please. In terms of the HSI, the number has not changed. It's still the same, 19.2. One thing that I'd like to point out is that our recruitment team will be hosting our Casa Abierta open house on March 28th. So that will be bringing in additional students, prospective students, and also enrollments. Next slide, please. This slide is also one of my favorites, and you can probably tell because it's detailed. It's by spring semester. It gives you the total head count of program students by pathway. The enrollments by pathway tell a story. They tell a story about where students are located and which are the areas that are growing at MATC. For example, the pathways highlighted in green are the pathways that continue to experience a growth in the demand of those programs and also credentials. So we have business and management, healthcare, manufacturing, construction, and transportation. On the bottom of the chart, you can also see that we have a summary of who the students are. We have continuing, new students, and returning students. So those are the students that make up of FTE. One thing that I like to point out when it comes to pathway enrollment is that we have been meeting weekly through the enrollment huddles. And the enrollment huddles are a group of stakeholders, faculty, staff, and administrators that come together to look at the data and also identify just-in-time strategies to be able to move the needle. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide right here, and please forgive me if it's a little confusing. I got really into the weeds of this leading indicator, and I actually had a lot of fun putting it together. And then I realized it may be a little confusing, but I like to point out in this retention leading indicator, we know that right now we are not able to measure retention, but we're able to see where we are in terms of leading indicators. So one of the things that I like to point out, for example, this chart shows you new students who are the students that have not taken any post-secondary courses in the past spring or fall semester at MATC. You have the continuing program students who are the students who took at least one post-secondary course at MATC in the past spring or fall terms, but not in the previous spring or fall term. And then you have our continuing students. So that is like the bulk of our FTEs right there. Our continuing students are those students who took at least one post-secondary course at MATC in a previous spring or fall semester. So I would like to point out the green highlighted area, which are the continuing program students. Specifically for spring 2024, 7,671 students were retained from the fall term into the spring term. When I say that this is a leading indicator, I'm not saying this is the final retention number, but it really gives us a snapshot and an overview of whether or not our strategies are working to be able to retain our students. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the last slide, and I wanted to just mention a little bit about the retention efforts and also highlight a little bit more of the retention rates disaggregated by race and ethnicity. We can see from the chart that there are some differences and similarities when it comes to different groups of students by race and ethnicity. We can see that our white and Asian students are retained at at very similar rates, but also at higher rates than other student populations. We can also see that our Black African American students tend to have some of the lowest retention rates at MATC. The reason why I'm showcasing this is because you are probably asking, what are we doing about this? Or advising retention, bilingual, and multicultural student services teams are continue to work to provide supports and resources to ensure that our students have everything that they need to be able to succeed at MATC and be retained. Also, when it comes to the DEI plan, the DEI plan also addresses some of these gaps, and it is very specific about ways that we can do, objectives that we can address to ensure that these gaps are eliminated. Again, our retention accounts for about 65% of our FTEs, and we will continue to address the gaps and work with our teams to ensure that all students at MATC, regardless of gender, race, or ethnicity, are being served. Next slide. Thank you so much. This concludes my presentation.
Are there questions on the report? Any questions in the room?
Yes.
Hang on just a second. Questions in the room? Okay, questions from our friends online. Was that Dr. Najib?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have 3 questions. The first, on the spring report, I noticed that more than a quarter of our student population are Hispanic. That's the first time this more than before. So are we eligible now to become Hispanic serving institution?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
I noticed that more than a quarter of our student population are Hispanic population students. So are we now eligible to be Hispanic serving institution?
Yes, no, the number that you see, the 25% that you see, that accounts for all students at MATC. It accounts for program and non-program students. So that also includes community ed students. The number that we actually utilize for Hispanic Serving Institution HSI designation is the number, the 19.2% that I highlighted in one of those slides. That is a good point. We're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
Okay. Second question, in the racial breakdown, I don't see a category for Arab and Middle Eastern student. Do we have any other way to capture their percentage?
There could be a change in the future in terms of how we capture that information. That has been a point of discussion across the state of Wisconsin, because in our application system, we only have Asian, right? And I know in my experience working with Arab Middle Eastern students, many of those students may identify as Asian, but sometimes they may be asked to identify as white as well. So that is a great point that you're bringing to us. And my wish for MATC is for us to continue working on the application and how we capture the very important demographic information.
Yeah, that's the second time I bring up this issue, and I don't know if anything done about it yet. I don't know how to start the process to really to speed it up.
I will make a note of this, and I will be committed to get back to all of you on that, okay?
Thank you very much. The third question, and the enrollment by pathways, is that correct? I see the student was choosing the healthcare classes is the most. The number is more than 3,000. It's more than the other categories. Is that right?
Yes, that is the biggest pathway at MATC, and it continues to grow by the hour.
Oh, great. Yeah. And I think there's more room for growth also in that sector. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Burris.
Hi, I'd like to point out that you stated that all across the nation that there are more minority students that are enrolling into classes. But then we also stated that those are the same students that's failing to complete. I think as a board, we should take a look into how we can best support our students continuously. My second question slipped my mind, but I will send it if it comes back to me.
Okay, all right, thanks, Director Burris.
Thank
Questions in the room? Oh, did you, just a second, no? Yes, Director Pence.
Just a comment, Najib talked about healthcare, I'm gonna talk about manufacturing. I had the opportunity to sit on one of the industry advisory committee meetings, and it was extremely well run. The faculty was very engaged in it. I got to look at some of the curriculum that is coming out for the machine tool area. It was very encouraging to see that. I also like the new partnership with Milwaukee Tech. Bradley Tech, because when I went there was Milwaukee Tech. I like the new partnership with that and getting, high school kids more interested in the machine tool things, because you need machine tool people to make medical devices and to make restaurant equipment and to make 2 cell phones and
I only have one.
And
we need teachers to get.
teachers, that's right. So it was a really, I was glad that I jumped in on that, and I just made a listing fly on the wall for that, but anyway.
Excellent, excellent.
May I respond? Thank you so much for your comment. I attended the dean's meeting this past week and got an opportunity to hear from Dean Alsop in regards to MCT. And many of those programs are already full. And there's a very low amount of available classes the students can take. So the demand for MCT is high. And absolutely working with Tony Taglavia and Dr. Dakwar and the deans to be able to look at opportunities and innovative ways to either expand those programs or, also reach out to other developing markets for MCT. So thank you.
Great. Yes.
Chair.
Director Burris, hang on just a second. Director Moore Makunde was next in line. I'll come right back to you.
Okay, so you mentioned the DEI plan. What is the total number of years that plan is to be enacted, and what year are we currently in?
Yes, this is the second year. And we have our DI officer here too, Mr. Michael Rogers. Second year, we're wrapping up second year now. It's a 5-year plan. And in that plan, there are very specific objectives in terms of the admissions process for Black students, Hispanic students, and other populations, and also the enrollment in the completion and success of primarily students of color, but other student populations as well. Okay.
And is there a possibility that we would extend beyond 5 years?
Absolutely. In my experience, 17 years of higher ed experience, typically we do DEI plans within a 5-year cycle, but there are institutions that have a 10-year cycle. And they are very much focused on the trends in higher education and making sure there are projections, and also projections in what may happen with DEI in the future too.
I only make that point because there is a national assault on DEI, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but there are those who use it as a response to witnessing George Floyd's murder on TV. And now many people are done with it. And so I want to make sure that we are a champion and are at the forefront of making sure we are continuing that commitment.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Vicky Martin is a champion for DEI. She brought in our first DEI officer, which was me, and her commitment continues with Mr. Michael Rogers in leading the DEI plan. It's here to stay, I would say.
Good.
Okay, I have 2 directors online. Director Burris.
I remembered my point. You made a comment about some of our Asian population of students having a decline. Have you been working with marketing to figure out how we can recoup and also move forward?
Yes, and also particularly, my work has been very closely aligned with multicultural student services. For example, or Asian American student services specialists and others. The Asian Employee Affinity Group have also been out in the community doing tons of events. But this is an area that we need to further explore to make sure that we continue to move the needle and we don't lag behind in those areas. So yes, absolutely. I have it in my notes to follow up on that.
And Dr. Najib?
One more question, and see if you have any more information. There's a report that there's going to be a big need for X-ray diagnostic techs in the future, especially in the field of precision medicine. And do you have any, because the need going to be really more than now, are we prepared to accept those students and advertise that we can really produce those, respond to that need?
Thank you so much for your question. I have our Dean of the Pathway of Healthcare, Dr. Eric Gass here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, in the next week or so, we're submitting a grant in partnership with UW-Madison, Madison College, and UW-Milwaukee to focus on expanding our ability to do like imaging. We're calling it a biotech hub for Southern Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
For MATC specifically, we're going to focus on radiography. We're going to focus on diagnostic medical sonography, increase our capacity, and also then not only graduating more students with those degrees, but looking into continuing education for those specific skills post-graduation that you're mentioning. So it would be a great opportunity for this institution and for the entire state to grow capacity in those fields.
That's great. That we can use that to advertise for students to enroll in MATC in those fields. I think this very attractive field for many students.
Well, and in addition to healthcare, there's also support for CNC and machining, because as you mentioned, the durable medical equipment can't be made without machining parts. So it's not just patient care, it's the broader industry and support industries that contribute that are impacted by this project as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very glad you were in the audience to join us. Director Burris, I see you have your hand up again. No,
I think it was just.
or maybe just stayed up. Okay.
My apologies.
Oh, that's cool. Director Mendieta.
Yeah, I just have one comment that we've been stuck at this 19% for the HSI for quite a while, and I would love to see that move up. So I don't know if we can put together a task force, how I can help, how we can all help, but I would really like to see that number go up any way that we can.
Absolutely. I will put it down and we'll touch base with Dr. Torres Najera and others.
And I just have one comment. When I look at the persistent and retention rating and the conversation around it, while I find the data fascinating, I do know that people leave MATC for a lot of positive reasons as well as negative reasons. And it's very hard to capture all of that in what we have to report to the state. People leave to get a job. People leave because they move to another educational institution to get more training. People leave because of a family issue and come back 6 months later or whatever it may be. And it is the nature of students who attend two-year colleges, and it's one of the wonderful things about how we enroll students. And so it is, you know, when I look at that chart, there are so many stories behind it that I think aren't captured, that, you know, and I'm not sure how we can, because I understand what we have to report to the state. But there are positive reasons that some students are not retained. Well, we would like them all to stay here for 2 years. I'm one of those students. I will constantly be seen as a failure at a two-year college in Illinois, and I have a master's degree now. So it's somehow I made it through all of that, but I left after 2 semesters because I got what I needed to get into an apprenticeship program. So I'm very sensitive to that.
Thank you for sharing that. I do have a survey and I may be able to highlight some of those areas as to why students leave. next month. Actually, that survey was just shared with me last week.
Okay.
So I'm happy to share just a couple of bullet points as to why are students leaving.
I think it helps us as a board also understand some of the stories behind the data.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Great. Any other? Oh,
So
yeah.
similar comment, just to tack on to that, we also don't do a good job of retaining or transitioning apprenticeship to associate degrees. And so students will go elsewhere because we don't know how to help them transition, nor do we have a fully structured program to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments online or in the room? Thank you. Appreciate the report.
Thank you.
The next report is the Milwaukee PBS General Manager's Report. Debbie Hamlin is not with us. She is also in DC at the same meeting that Director Foley is attending. You do have a written report on your stack of all your papers in front of you. It should be right after the enrollment report. It was also emailed out to board members in advance, but you have it here in front of you as well. And with that, then I'd move on to the District Student Senate Report and Kimberly Haynes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Baker, President Foley, Dr. Vicky Martin, members of MATC, District Board and Administration. The District Student Government Association met on February 16, 2024. We approved $2,000 funding to HVAC for 54 students to attend a conference in the Dells. Black Student Union withdrew their request for funding. We approved the International Society of Automation. 15 students attend regularly and 39 students are interested. MATC ISA Club is training about automation and to encourage experimentation in the field of electronics. We approved $100 to the Student Nurses Association for 10 boxes and paint to design boxes for domestic violence victims who go to the ER and they take their clothes for evidence. So they're designing the boxes for new clothes items. DSGA has a new chairperson, Warren Murphy, who is very motivated to move DSGA forward. Additionally, DSGA reviewed inactive organizations and voted to remove organizations. Overall, even with this removal, the number of student organizations are up. Lastly, we discontinued discussions on changes to DSGA constitution and received feedback from student organizations that were present. In Wisconsin student government, we were blessed with 3 days in Madison, Wisconsin, February 18th to the 20th. They did another tour of the state capitol. From the motivational speaker, Ziggy Ashtay Odegon Williams, we learned not to give up on anything we are trying to do and to be the one to stand up for what we want and to make a difference. WSG decided to put $20,000 into a high interest savings account to ensure the financial stability of WSG. Dr. Morna Foy, president of WTCS, talked about diversity and the importance of owning your leadership. Brendan Trujillo, policy advisor for WTCS, gave us an overview of the WTCS and that the budget was now closed for this year. So position paper was for them to think about for next year. On February 20th, 2024, we got to go to the state capitol and talk to senators' aides because the senators were in the caucus. I gave Senator Chris Larson a WSG mug that was left over with hot chocolate in it so that every time he has coffee, he can think about our needs at WSG and MATC. Student Life has done an awesome job in offering information, bookmarkers, pencils, and stickers on Black History Month. They have lots of literature posted and offered a Black History Month lunch, which was open to MATC students, staff, and faculty. They also have a movie, Hidden Figures, which showed today, and another movie, 12 Years a Slave, showing tomorrow at room 1:30 or 11:30, I'm sorry, in room 117. Snacks were and will be offered. Finally, I thank you for your time and the opportunity to share this information with you today and keep you updated. I look forward to our meeting next month.
Thank you. Any questions? Dr. Moore McCoonby.
So the Black Student Union, you said that they removed their request for funding?
Yes,
Do we know why?
we don't know why.
Okay,
They just said that they were removing it, so
okay.
sorry.
And one of the names that you mentioned, Ade,
Ashtay Abigan Williams?
Adeogun, is that the last name?
Yes.
Okay. In my mind, I hear Yoruba names, and so I repronounce them to myself. It's Adeogun.
Okay.
So, and I didn't get a mug, and I'm gonna ask Senator Larson if I can borrow his mug.
Oh.
Since it was left over, I'll just borrow it.
I see Director Director Burris has her hand up.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could get a copy of the DSGA's constitution
Sure.
and a list of their elected officials.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, we can have that sent to board members.
Okay.
Any other questions? Great. So we're now going to move on to our quarterly reports. First is our advisory audit report, and we'll have Director Case.
Yes, I would be happy to do that.
Welcome back, incidentally.
Thank you.
Two board meetings in one night.
Yeah, right. Multitasking. All right, the advisory audit committee met on Thursday, February 8th. An internal audit update was then provided by Mr. Kubik regarding risk assessment. A global survey on top risks for 2024 and 2034 was shared. It was noted that multiple risks overlapped with the most recent MATC risk assessment, showing that similar risks are being felt around the world, around many varied industries and by organizations of all sizes. The FY 2024 audit plan status was then discussed. It was noted that internal audits assistance with the guided pathways plan do check adjust project was not needed. As such, it was dropped from the plan. Work continues on the financial aid and data quality audits, as well as other projects and work group committee participation. Regarding audit results, Mr. Kubik noted that no audits had been completed since the last committee meeting. The committee was provided an update on audit follow-up, noting 2 action plans had been completed since the prior meeting. Mr. Kubik and Mr. Don Kasperzak, I can talk, Director of Information Security, discussed MATC's implementation of the Avante Input Security software. This implementation was part of fulfilling Dr. Martin's goal related to patching and deployment strategies to improve overall cybersecurity, as well as meeting new cyber insurance requirements. This product will strengthen patching and endpoint management, but also provide analytical data to assist with the decision-making and business operations, and potentially provide enhanced capabilities on the academic side in terms of setting up classrooms. Finally, Mr. Kubik noted that in his opinion, the committee is on pace to meet its requirements for FY 2024. That is the advisory audit committee update.
Any questions for Director Case? Any questions online?
Please don't ask me about cybersecurity.
We have no experts in that field. Next, next report would be on our other post-employment benefits, our OPEB and FCC trust report. I believe we have Jeffrey Schrader with us tonight from PFM Asset Management, and will give us a brief presentation. Come forward, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. And this is, as you might remember, is a follow-up from a couple of months ago when Floyd Simpson and myself were here. Floyd's obviously not here tonight. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he's on paternity leave. So
Congratulations.
I'll pass that on to him. Thank you. But I believe that you were provided this 4-page report update on the two investment portfolios, the FCC Spectrum Trust. Oh, there they are on the screen. Perfect. And the OPEB Trust portfolio as well. So the first 2 pages should look familiar. Those are the usual reports, the usual pages that are provided to the board on a quarterly basis. So I'll briefly go over those, and again, happy to entertain questions at any time. This is the quarterly report for ending December. So this is the October, November, December quarter that is complete. So this first page here, page 1, is the FCC Spectrum Trust. And if we look at the left side, there's 2 representations of asset allocation first. And this, as we mentioned last time, is an 80-20 portfolio. And what that means is 80% equities or stocks in a sense, and 20% fixed income or bonds. And so you can see here, you know, if you add up the domestic equities, which would be domestic stock funds, international equities or funds, and also the alternatives, you get close to that 80% number, and the remaining is really the fixed income and a little bit of cash, adds up to 19%, close to that 20%. So, and you've got a pie chart here that also breaks that down. So that's an 80-20, and it adds up to, as you can see here, over $103 million in that FCC Spectrum Trust portfolio at the end of last year. On the right side, you can see some top right section performance summary. And if we look at the first quarter, again, that we're reporting on here, on the left side of that, the 1 quarter that's again the fourth quarter, October, November, December. You can see some positive and strong results. As you might know, the fourth quarter was very strong for stock markets, bond markets, with interest rates falling, stocks and stock funds like interest rates falling. It's also you know, the fixed income math is very positive for bonds. So you can see the absolute return, you know, what we're representing here, and we're going to break it down further in a couple of pages, but 8.41%, that's just for the quarter. It's not an annualized number. It was just a very strong quarter. And I'll also mention that what we're representing here, this performance information, includes as you would expect, includes the alternative investments. That $18 million that's on the left side includes that. And we're going to break that down in a couple of pages. So I'm just making that note here. And on the right side, we've closed the gap with the strong quarter that was the fourth quarter. The other periods, the little that was lagging performance, that gap has been closed, and we expect that to continue. On the bottom right portion is the performance summary, really the dollars, and you can see the quarter started with $95 million, earned over $8 million. That's, you know, equivalent to that 8.41%, and ended again the period $103 million. And then that other column to the right, since inception, since October of 17, started at $84 million. You've spent essentially $23 million on various things, and that's you know, in part what the money's there for. The portfolio has earned over $41 million, and again, winding up at that $103 million level. So that is the kind of an overview of the FCC Spectrum Trust. I'll go a little bit quicker on the next page, because the OPEB portfolio, page 2, is very similar in many ways. It's about half the size. It's about you can see $54 million if we look at the asset allocation on the left. It's a 75-25 portfolio, so very similar, not that much different between 80-20 and 75-25, but a little bit of a difference. And then also I'll note that the alternative investments, you know, think private equity. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Instead of targeting what was 18%, or the target's actually 20% on the prior portfolio, this only has a 5% target for alternatives. So that's one difference between the two portfolios. Similar strong performance in Q1 for the OPEB Trust portfolio, as you can see there, and that helped close the gap for the longer periods, and you can see the dollars as they flow through. similarly. Happy to take questions at any time. If there's no questions on the two overview pages, got two more pages of information to share. We'll spend a little bit of time on page 3 here. And so this is breaking down the FCC Spectrum Trust portfolio. And there's two blue lines you see across the page, the total fund with alternatives, and then the total fund X alternatives, or without those alternative investments. And so the first line, with alternatives is the same performance information that you saw. You might recognize, that 8.41% versus the 7.80% benchmark, 61 basis points of outperformance for the quarter. So that information is all essentially the same. But then on the next line, total fund, without alternatives, you can see the dollars are reduced by the 18 million. So just looking at the $85 million that's not in alternatives and focusing on the performance there. You say, well, why do you bother to back out the alternative investments? And that's explained in that note right below that. And alternative investments, couple of things. They the bulk of the alternative investments have recently been added to the portfolio, and they take a while to fund and really come into play. So they haven't really been involved. If we haven't been at 18%, we went back a year, we were more like in the 10 or 12% level. So the alternative investments really haven't had a chance to mature, and also there's a lag effect in reporting. You might look at that first quarter number, like the 8.41% versus the 10.4, and say, boy, are the alternatives dragging down? Well, they're not, but alternative investments don't report performance very quickly. In the details, the alternative investments are actually 0%. That 18% is dragging down that the 10.4% to 8.41%, because the alternative investments simply don't report their performance. We don't have access to it. So it's something that Director Case and staff, we look at in more detail on a quarterly basis. But with all that said, what we're getting at here, well, and also some of the alternative investments in the top line, we inherited some alternative investments from the prior manager, and that dragged down some of the performance, early on. So the without alternatives line, the second line is we think a pure reflection of our performance. And you can see here, the green box is looking at the quarter, almost 50 basis points of outperformance, the 10.46 versus the 9.95. That was due to a little bit of overweight in domestic equity. And also, as it says here in the Q4 comments, the positive contribution from active international managers and active fixed income managers. So it was a strong absolute performance, and also strong relative performance. And then in the spirit of time, I could skip the two negative performance. I think Floyd explained that pretty well last time. I'm happy to go over that again, but they're explained in the red boxes and the information at the bottom of page 3. And then lastly, just to see on page 4, the overall positioning of the portfolio, both the FCC Spectrum Trust and the OPEB portfolio. And as it says in the bullet right below, we're effectively neutral duration to the intended targets. That's the goal. A little bit of overweight to some of the equities as we're especially, we're still just a little shy of the 20% target in alternatives. But as that pending private equity capital calls occur, the money will come out of domestic equity and go into the alternatives to meet that 20% target. So that's hopefully a positive update on the performance for the fourth quarter. Again, happy to take any questions or comments on anything related to investments.
Any questions from board members in the room? No. Questions from board members online? I was delighted to see our performance versus our benchmark change. I think that was the message you heard from us.
Yes.
Pretty loud and clear, and it's good to see that performance there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to board monitoring. So the first item in front of you in our board monitoring is the approval of the board self-evaluation instrument. This has now appeared before the board a couple of months in a row. And we haven't gotten any feedback to change it. And so I'm hoping that this evening we could just have a consensus that this monitoring tool is good enough for us to move forward with, and we will use this then at the end of the school year when we're monitoring our performance. Any objections to a consensus approval of this?
Nope.
Very good. Then that item won't appear on our agenda next month. And now we'll move on to the Zansel update. I can't talk tonight. And we're going to ask the Vice President of Learn, Mohammed Dakbar, to come forward. And I see that we also have the Vice President of Local 212 with us as well.
Good evening, and thanks so much for having us. My name is Mohammed Dakbar, Vice President of Learning, and
Dwayne Schlund, I'm full-time faculty here, and I serve as the Executive Vice President for Local 212 as well.
and we've shared the PowerPoint presentation, relatively short, one slide with some updates, and we'll be glad to address any questions that you may have.
So folks got that in advance as well. Are there any questions from board members in the room on the progress that we're making here? Any questions from board members online? I see Dr. Najib, your hands.
Yes. Once the Zansel assignment has been made, who approves this or denies the Zansel? Is there any person in particular does that, or a committee does that?
So we have a process. Thanks for that question. So we have a process that we follow. First, the documents given to lead faculty and other faculty interested in the Zansel special projects, and they submit it to their deans. It gets reviewed, and then it gets passed on to me as the Vice President of Learning. And then ultimately, I will make the final cut or the final decision, pass it on to class scheduling.
So, in percentage-wise, usually they get approved, or some get denied, or a lot get denied. Just percentage-wise, how is the process working?
So, as far as the percentage and the calculation, we have a standard process, what we call a calculator. It has very specific metrics within it. It has also some description, and then it's kind of, we did some training as well. They can just tell us what they do, in what fashion, for how long, and the calculator calculates that. So we don't really question the percentage, if that's a question. We typically want to know what they're doing. And then one more thing that I want to add, within that calculator also, they can, there is a tab where they can talk about deliverables or outcomes, meaning to say, this is what we intend to do, and this is what you can expect. So that's the extent of how this process works.
So if they just a follow-up question, if they follow, for example, the guideline, then almost automatic approval, then there's there's no reason to deny it then, right?
In the lead faculty model, it's almost a standard. It's where, special projects, essential functions, availability of budget, the timing of the request, and so on and so forth. Yes, we do. I'm sorry, I missed that. So there are some, we do, and we may deny certain requests based on, again, the factors that I just mentioned.
So how do you reconcile that? For example, you denied it because it's not, there's no budget for it. So what happened to the person who already put the time and put the effort and then get denied? How do you deal with it?
So technically, we approve this far in advance. So technically, they apply for it, and then we let them know whether it's approved or denied. They can also appeal. So this is before they start the work. So anytime that there's a work that's done, they get compensated for. So, but this always happens far in advance.
So that was one of the process improvements. We wanted things approval more in advance because we were having occasions where work was being done before the approval, and then we were running into problems if the full amount was not approved or if the whole request was denied. So in some cases, there's partial approval. So that's been the part of the progress over the last semester, is that we have these approvals in advance so that right around the timing of class scheduling, so that people can know what to expect. And then if they want to pick up an additional class, or how to manage their class load with this assignment.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Director Burris.
Thank you. So 2 questions. Are both parties satisfied with the progression that, or talks that's going on, and when will the changes go into effect?
So this has been a collaborative effort, and that's why you see Dwayne and myself sitting here. We've really worked. We have committees behind this, sub-teams that worked on this and so on. It's collaborative decision-making, so to speak. You know, we work very closely, and we just kind of challenge the issues, and we look into best practices, and that's what we mutually came up with. This became effective, I want to say late into last fall. So it's been going on for some time.
So the changes were put in, we have seen improvement. It hasn't been perfect, but it's been greatly improved. We have a little work to do on the discussion for summer to ensure students and programs and essential projects are supported through the summer, but we're working on that.
I'll add one more thing to that. We are also working on the communication to improve the communication, the timeline and so on. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Any other yes, Director Pence.
The role of the associate dean seems to, is it still foggy? Is there any resolution to that, or?
So we had lead faculty when we had multiple associate deans per pathway.
Okay.
And really a lot of the work increased for lead faculty when those associate deans were removed. So adding one associate dean per pathway back may take some of the workload off of lead faculty. In some cases, it increases it because of the model is different. In the past, everything flowed through the associate dean and we could prioritize. Now we're operating under a different model. So communication comes from different areas within the college and those horizontal departments. So the prioritization isn't necessarily there of flowing through the associate dean. So sometimes that associate dean might remove workload, sometimes add it. I'm sure the associate deans have helped to lessen the work of the deans, but it depends on the program and the pathway as to how much the associate dean has removed that. If anything, there's more collaboration between the associate dean and the program chair or department chair, instructional chairs.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions online? Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
updates. And then last we have our update on the community education program, our Dean of Community Ed, Dr. Sadiq Isuhaka. Go Arsenal.
Good afternoon. We're here to give you an update on community education. I think we did submit some slides. We have only a few updates. There are 5 activity changes in the slides. You can see that in the one-stop shop, we've made some progress. Dr. King and I are working on this very closely. We were in Oak Creek yesterday to explore spaces potentially that could be used as remodeling spaces for community education hubs. We were there with the Chris Johnson from Construction Services to give us practical advice on that. We walked into a lot of places to do that. Downtown spaces are being explored as well. West Alice and Mekwan seem to be smaller, and we're getting to them later. Walker Square is the model that we're going to use to scale up to the others.
I just want to be clear that I think there was a question some of you had last time, which was, when is this happening? So we're taking steps right now to explore each of those and then partnering with construction services. The Oak Creek one comes alongside right now, a potential significant remodel of the admission center space that had been planned. So we have an opportunity. And so we started there. Some of the highest activity I've seen on campuses, by the way, in the morning with lots of full classrooms. I haven't seen that in a long time. So anyone who wants to show up at 8:30 in the morning, Oak Creek, you see a lot of activity. So
Right. The second new activity is staff shortages, the concern about staff shortages. You can see from the slides that lots of hires have taken place year to date, both full-time and part-time. Majority of them are grant funded. You can see that we have WTCS grants, but significant numbers have been employed. One of the things we're doing now is to prioritize based on enrollment numbers and based on FTE counts and activity levels where the staff should be. Most of the staff are multi-campus. We've done that deliberately so that we can move people where the need is. The same with the faculty hiring year to date. You can see the numbers showing there, new faculty. We have also posted 2 new faculty positions, ELL. They are going to be both going to ELL. One is going to Oak Creek, and the other is downtown. We will continue to explore opportunities to increase, to maintain the 4 LTEs. As you remember, the grant funded LTE positions, we want to keep them. We had a meeting with WTCS this week to explore opportunities of additional funding, and it was encouraging conversation because they said we will go and look in our budgets and we'll get back to you by the end of March. So that's encouraging. The testing center, that's the other new activity. Schedules have been designed for each campus on when testing, pre and post testing are going to happen. New testing assessment technicians have been hired to the positions where we had vacancies. There's 7 workers on West Alice temporarily, but I think the positions, I'm not sure where they are. Remember,
the other one's pending?
Yeah.
They're still coming. So I would say on the testing situation, we met with Nicole Tanner, who was here last time. I did mention her name. She sat in the audience. She's the person in charge of testing. We have a total of up to 9 positions available. 2 are still vacant. We're trying to reallocate them. We met very closely. I believe you meet each week with CE faculty, that potential for testing. So reallocation of resources that both include the open and closing times at all campuses, again, differentiated based on what you heard Sadiq mention, where the volume of students. So somewhat differentiated schedules depending on the site. Milwaukee, Oak Creek, again, remember, our highest in terms of headcount for ELL. Okay, so you're going to see a predominance of more staff. There are 3 at Milwaukee, for example, 2 at Oak Creek, and then identification of the deployment of the additional staff when they come on board. So we looked at that model, tried to identify where the staff could best represent, asked for an expanded set of hours, and that was communicated back with the CE faculty, who I think have been able to look at it, give feedback. I don't know what the outcome of that feedback was.
Well, they're very receptive.
Okay.
Yeah. So they didn't see any challenges in executing.
Right. And again, we have 2 additional staff to add to that. Those are just pending staff we want to add.
Right.
And then there's still some work to be done based on how we've done testing in the past. This is actually a much more complicated testing process than some of the other ones we do. It involves not only the testing center staff, but then intermediate, faculty members are required to do lots of intermediate testing throughout ELL. It's just a requirement of how it works for reporting purposes. And then post-testing, again, back to the testing center. So we're then also working on clarifying those steps, processes, ownership. Some of that changed both during COVID as well as the guided pathways. So again, strong partnership, though, I believe, with your CE faculty around what that looks like, as well as the director for the center.
Okay.
And for board members who are looking, it's actually slide 11 is on testing.
All right.
But you do have them in front of you, also the slides.
There are 2 items. I want to mention them before we get questions about the out-of-state tuition, the issue. The question is being modified. We're still working to make sure that we are within state guidelines of, first of all, identifying out-of-state students. We're working on a model to reimburse the students who have been mistakenly charged tuition. And I think there are probably 3 or 4 right now. So that is being considered. The question is going to be very simple. Do you live in Wisconsin or Minnesota? Because those are the 2 reciprocity things, places, and we're working on clarifying that. Any questions?
Questions from board members in the room first? Questions from board members online. Director Burris.
Thank you. I feel as though I'm regurgitating my words every time we speak about this issue. What is it going to take? What resources do you guys need in order to resolve some of those simpler issues like the application question, refunding students who have been charged that shouldn't have been charged?
Regarding the application, there is a statute about collecting that data for employment purposes and for grant purposes. So we cannot unilaterally change that language without first of all clarifying with the state. We talked with WTCS adult education team, and they're looking into it to help us. They actually told us we are not the only institution that is having that problem, and the fact that we are we're a border state, border city. We have that problem more prominent than others who are inland because we do have students coming from Illinois. The other thing is that because of the pandemic, we opened up for online classes to support the higher level ELL and GED students. So we occasionally get students coming in registering from other states. And so we have to be very careful that we charge them appropriately because taxpayers' dollars should go to in-state students first and foremost. And so that's why it's a little bit, it's taking some time. But our advisors and academic support specialists are all aware and they are working on it. The current students that we have, we are ensuring that they are guided through responding to that question so that they don't mistakenly check that they're out of state. And that fee comes in automatically if they check out of state.
Correct. Go ahead.
I said we're working on those issues. They're a little bit complicated. If they were easy, we would have done them already. They're a little tough to resolve. I can assure you that I want that issue resolved more than anybody because I don't want students charged fees that shouldn't be charged. I know the students don't have that money. They shouldn't be charged fees. And then I want the application process to be as easy as possible. And so we have developed a new application form. I think you asked that as well. The new application form has a few questions on it. The first application, and I think we mentioned it in one of our presentations. So the initial application will just allow students to get a student ID, which will enable them to do the test and so on.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. Last month or the month before, you stated that in talks with the state, they did let you know that you could change the question. However, you just had to report the information that they need.
Right. So for fall, that will be the case. For fall admissions, that will be the case. Right now, all the students that we have are already in classes. So new applications will include the new language. New applicants will not have that problem. That's what I'm basically saying.
Okay. Great. Anything else, Director Burrs? No, she just turned her mic off. Any other questions online? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is new business. Do we have any new business to come before the board? Director Burris.
I think your hand was.
Or that hand already been up.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. Anybody else? New business come before the board? Hearing none. Future events and announcements. I already mentioned the spring meeting of the Technical College District Boards Association. Just a reminder, that's March 21 through 23 in Rhinelander. Our next meeting will be March 26th, 2024 in, at 4:30 PM, right in this room downtown. And with that, Director Mendieta Ramos has a motion to read for us.
I move that the district board convene into closed session pursuant section 19.851G and C of the Wisconsin statutes to discuss item 11.8 litigation update and item 11B presidential research. The board may reconvene into open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session under item 11 if necessary.
We have a second on the motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mendieta Ramos, as she just said, and seconded by Director Case. May we have roll call, please?
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye.
Director Maura Mukunde,
Aye.
Director Najib,
Aye.
Director Owen Moore,
Aye.
Director Pence,
Aye.
Director Burris,
Aye.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye. The board will take a brief break as we move into closed session. I do remind people that after our closed session, the board will engage in a training with the Higher Learning Commission. You are all welcome to come back and join us and watch. Thank you all very much.
We could be at 7?
Yeah, we'll come back.